Welcome to the next episode of I Call BS. On April Fool's Day, Justin Trudeau is playing a cruel joke on Canadians. He's hiking the carbon tax by 23% as part of his plan to quadruple the tax over the next 6 years. This tax increases the cost of everything at a time when government money printing has already led to historic cost of living crises. 2 million Canadians used a food bank in a single month last year. This year, there will be 1 million more visits to food banks just so people can survive. In fact, things have gotten so bad that food banks are forced to turn people away because there just isn't enough to give out. In Toronto, 1 in 10 people use a food bank. And now there's a Facebook group with over 8,000 members called the Dumpster Diving Network, where Canadians share tips on how you can climb into a garbage can and pull out food to feed yourself because you can't afford groceries after 8 years of Trudeau. But worry not. Trudeau says his carbon tax will make you better off.
First conclusion of the Parliamentary Budget Officer is, in the math, on the face of it, 8 out of 10 families get more back through the price on pollution.
On the face of it? You see, let's break it down. There is the direct cost of the carbon tax you see on your bill as you buy gas or pay for your heating. There's the indirect cost added to goods that become more expensive because the carbon tax increases the cost of making and transporting them. For example, a tax on the fuel of the farmer who makes the food and the trucker who ships the food is a tax on all who buy the food. But then there is the third cost, the economic cost. Because the tax weighs down businesses and farmers and other producers, it forces the economy, and therefore wages, pensions, and other income, to drop. That's not my interpretation. It comes from the Parliamentary Budget Officer's own study. He confirmed that the carbon tax makes 60% of families poorer. You can hear it for yourself.
Once you factor in the rebate, but also the economic impacts, based on our modeling, the majority of households will see a negative impact as a result of the carbon tax.
The Parliamentary Budget Officer has in fact calculated that the overall GDP of Canada is 0.6% lower this year because of the carbon tax than it would otherwise be, an amount that will grow year after year after year. Now, 0.6% might not sound like a lot, but it works out to $18 billion in reduced GDP, a cost of more than $1,000 for every family in Canada. These costs are not included in Justin Trudeau's face value calculation of what people truly pay in carbon taxes. Happily, the Parliamentary Budget Officer has included them and done so in a way that demonstrates the vast majority of Canadians are worse off and pay more than they get back. The Liberal government has also made another claim that is BS. They say the tax is, quote, revenue neutral.
We have guaranteed that this price on carbon will be revenue neutral for the federal government.
In fact, public records show that from 2019, when the tax came in, to 2023, the most recent calendar year, the government collected $20.7 billion in carbon tax revenue, but only paid out $18.6 billion in rebates. That means the government kept a net $2.1 billion of your money. That's right, they took in $2.1 billion more in carbon taxes than they paid out in these so-called carbon rebates. No wonder that the Parliamentary Budget Officer has found that in every single province where Trudeau's carbon tax is imposed by the federal government, the average family pays more in carbon tax costs than they get back in his rebates. Here's the breakdown. For Alberta, for Saskatchewan, for Manitoba, for Ontario, for Nova Scotia, for PEI, for Newfoundland and Labrador. Don't take my word for it. You can Google it yourself and look at the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report entitled A Distributional Analysis of the Federal Fuel Charge under the 2030 Emissions Reduction Plan. Page 3. It shows that in all provinces where the tax is federally imposed, average families are worse off on a net basis. And in those provinces where the federal government mandates, but the province implements the tax, well, in many of those provinces, there is no rebate at all. So it's even worse, proving that no matter where you live, anywhere in Canada, you are paying more in carbon taxes than you get back in rebates if you're part of a middle-class family. And this is all before Trudeau quadruples the carbon tax. This is because when you tax the farmer who grows the food, the trucker who ships the food, you tax all who buy the food. You're making the food more expensive. Grain farmers in Ontario have said that the cost of the carbon tax will be between $122 and $160 per acre that they farm. According to the Canadian Trucking Alliance, the trucking industry has paid $1.2 billion last year for the carbon tax. Does Justin Trudeau think that all this money just comes out of thin air? Of course not. When government raises the costs on the businesses that sell you things, they pass on those costs through higher prices for consumers and lower wages for workers. In other words, there's one person who pays for it, you. And that's why when Trudeau says the tax makes you better off, I call BS. Common sense conservatives will cut the BS and the tax. Better yet, we'll axe the tax altogether. Let's bring it home.